Russia sold Alaska to the United States in 1867 primarily as financial strategy for $7.2 million, an amount which could translate into $162 billion in today, 2025 standards. Hello, and welcome again to the Global Cultural Drift Podcast. Geopolitical Queen here with today's episode on how Russia sold Alaska to the United States to protect their other territories. The United States and Russia are separated by the Pacific Ocean, the largest ocean in the world. However, looking from the far north, we realize that the United States and Russia are neighbors. Actually, much closer than you might imagine. To break it down, the distance between United States and Russia is only about 82 kilometers. But what's even more surprising is that if we zoom in a little, the distance becomes significantly smaller. In the area between Little Diomede Islands, which is under U.S. control, and Big Diomede Island, controlled by Russia, the distance between the two countries shrinks to just about 4 kilometers. Adding to the trickery, these two islands are divided by the international date lines. This results in a time difference of approximately 21 hours between the islands. Even though the distance can be crossed by foot over the frozen sea in winter in about 40 minutes, this means that if you were to cross the border from Little Diomede Island at 2 p.m., you would arrive at Big Diomede Island at 11 a.m. the next day. Nevertheless, crossing the border is strictly prohibited, and the boundary between the two islands is essentially closed. Hence, anyone wanting to travel between these two islands would need to circle the entire globe. This makes Big Diomede Island the easternmost point of the Earth and Little Diomede the westernmost point. Little Diomede and Big Diomede Islands are located in the middle of the Barents Strait, the waterway that connects the Barents Sea to the Arctic Ocean and separates the continents of Asia and North America. About 11,000 years ago, Asia and North America were connected by a land bridge known as Beringia. During this time, groups of people migrated eastward from Asia, eventually spreading throughout the Americas, settling the land and forming hundreds of tribes and nations. These groups would later be known as Native Americans or American Indians. Be as it may, this land bridge began to disappear as sea levels gradually rose until it completely vanished about 11,000 years ago. This formed the Barents Strait, which became the dividing line between Asia and North America, isolating the populations living east of the Pacific Ocean for thousands of years. In the 16th century, after the Mongol defeat, Russia began pursuing a policy of expansion. Russia continued to expand eastward to increase its population, benefit from taxes, and control the lucrative fur trade of the time. After less than 100 years, Russia finally reached the Pacific Ocean and subsequently gained control over almost all of Siberia, transforming Russia into a vast empire stretching from Europe to Asia, making it one of the most significant powers on Earth. But the Russians decided to continue their eastward expansion. At this time, the Russians had no information about the lands on the other side of the ocean. So they decided to conduct exploratory voyages in the Pacific and try to discover new territories in the east. Going forward to the 18th century, the fur trade in Siberia began to decline due to overhunting. Therefore, the Russian Tsar Peter the Great decided to initiate the exploration of the Far East. In 1725, the Tsar commissioned the Danish explorer Vitus Barent to lead this expedition. 3 years later, the ship set sail from the port of Okhotsk in eastern Russia and headed northeast across the Pacific. Here, Barent passed through a strait separating Asia and North America, which would later be named after him, the Barents Strait. However, Barent ultimately failed to discover the American coast due to fog and ice. This expedition allowed Russia to map the northeastern coast of Asia, confirming that there was no land connection between Asia and North America. Subsequently, the Russian Empire decided to undertake a second, much larger exploratory expedition towards the Far East, which would become one of the largest exploration projects in history. Led by Barent, the second expedition set sail from the far east of Russia in 1741 and began its voyage towards the coast of North America. The expedition finally succeeded in discovering the northwestern coast of North America, the region now known as Alaska. Here, they gathered information about the plants, animals, and people living in the area. Unfortunately, on the return journey, Barent's ship was caught in violent storms and wrecked. Barent eventually fell ill and died. Part of the ship's crew, however, managed to build a boat from the wreckage and eventually reached the Russian coast. The crew brought with them animal furs collected from Alaska, which were described as the finest furs. With this product, Russia began to assert control over the Alaska region. Russia now literally spanned 3 continents, controlling part of Eastern Europe, all of Northern Asia, and the northwestern part of North America. In 1743, groups of fur traders began sailing from the Russian coast towards the Aleutian Islands. Here, Russian traders began establishing hunting and trading posts along the islands. Russia continued to gain control over more land and established the first permanent Russian settlement in Alaska, making Alaska part of Russian territory and known as Russian America. The Russian-American Company, which controlled the fur trade in the region and established new settlements in Russian America, was established. Initially, Russia's goal was to continue expanding further into North America, but they encountered Great Britain in the east, which had expanded and annexed most of the land in the north. In the south, the United States was also successfully expanding and annexing more territories until it finally reached the Pacific coast in the west. As such, Russia decided to halt its expansion and content itself with the vast territory it controlled, spanning 3 continents. Conversely, in the mid-9th century, the number of animals in Russian America began to decline, significantly reducing Russia's profits from its North American colonies. At the same time, Russia was embroiled in a war with the Ottoman Empire in the far west. In 1853, Great Britain and France intervened and fought alongside the Ottoman Empire against Russia. Britain and France's primary goal was to weaken Russia and remove it from competition in the colonial sphere. The war ended with an Ottoman victory over the Russian Empire. During this war, which lasted about 3 years, Britain and France attacked Russia by Russia's port in the east of the Pacific coast. The Russians realized that Russian America was becoming difficult to defend and was becoming a financial burden, especially since the region shared a border with their powerful enemy at that time, which was Great Britain. Ultimately, Russia decided to sell its territories in North America. The choice fell on the United States, a country that had good relations at that time with Russia and was also an adversary of Great Britain. As such, selling the territory to the United States would create a buffer between Russia and Britain. The United States' goal was to expand further in North America and control a larger portion of the Pacific coast. Therefore, the United States saw the purchase of Alaska as an unmissable opportunity, especially since control over these lands would facilitate American trade with Asia. The United States agreed in principle to the purchase and was ready to begin negotiations with the Russians to finalize the deal. However, at this time, the American Civil War had started, a war that lasted about 4 years and was considered one of the bloodiest wars in American history. During this war, Russia supported the United States president and the Union against the secessionists. Ultimately, the Union succeeded in defeating the secessionists, and the war finally ended in May 1865. After that, the Russian Tsar ordered the resumption of negotiations. Within about a month, in early March 1867, the deal was finalized, and Russian America was sold for $7.2 million. Russian America officially became part of the United States territory, finally ending the Russian presence in North America. Interestingly, this deal was famously dubbed Seward's Folly in the United States at the time, after the U.S. Secretary of State, William Seward, who led the negotiations with Russia. This was because many considered him foolish for buying an icebox for $7.2 million. However, the icebox that the United States purchased at that time added approximately 15 million acres of arable land and over 10,000 kilometers of coastline, along with 3,000 rivers and over 3 million lakes. Alaska has a vast area exceeding 1.7 million square kilometers, which is about 20% of the total area of the United States. After Alaska joined the Union in 1959, it officially became the largest state in the United States. Today, Alaska is one of America's most important states and a source of its military strength in the Pacific against any threat, especially from Russia. The state possesses vast quantities of oil and gas and has the largest silver and zinc mines. It also holds approximately half of America's coal reserves. Due to the large amounts of gold found there, Alaska is considered the land of gold for the United States. So here you have it, folks. If you enjoyed listening to the story of how Russia sold Alaska to the United States to protect their other vast territories, then kindly leave your comments in the comment section below. And thanks for tuning in. I will be back with the next broadcast. Good day.